Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well. Welcome back to Honey Hill. I'm Samantha. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to show you this late summer flower arrangement that we're going to be putting together with flowers 100% from my garden. I love to study my garden this way and bringing flowers into the house and getting up close and personal with them, seeing what's doing well at this time of year. The garden, if you are a gardener, you know that your garden changes from week to week throughout the growing season. And I want to see what's been performing, what I wish there were more of right now, what I wish I want to add to the garden next year, and honestly, what's been left over from the deer at this time of year when they are so ravenous and they're eating everything in my garden. It's just the reality of my life here. Where I garden, is deer are just a huge problem. I also have this gorgeous pedestal vase from a brilliant potter in England named George Bronwyn. So I'm really excited to be using this piece today. And then I picked up a antique or vintage flower frog from an antique shop locally earlier in the summer. On the rare occasion that I go out and do that kind of shopping, I always look for flower frogs because it's such an economical way of finding them. And then I wrapped it with plastic wrap on the bottom so that it doesn't scratch this beautiful piece. And I have some water and my snips, and let's get started. So there's going to be some repeats from last time of what I had because this is my garden. So I have the Tinkerbell Nicotiana for the flowering tobacco, and it's mostly going to seed now, just a few little pieces or a few little blooms left on the ends. But I love the form and the shape of it. I'm going to go ahead and add water here before we get started. But it's one that I definitely want to add again next year. And I actually picked up seed for a similar variety to this Nicotiana, but it's more of a deeper chocolate color flower. This is sort of like that dusty mauve, which I want to keep repeating, but I also wanted to try something a little bit different. So I'm gonna have that right there. I love that shape. So I'm just going to be adding in my foliage and my little accent structure. Removing, as always, as much of the basal foliage and the leaves to kind of keep the water as clean as possible. And then I have a little second flush in the garden of the Dara, which is also a nice filler. And I'll have her kind of, where do I want you? Popping out here. Yeah. These glass flower frogs are so nice to have, but you know, flower frogs can be kind of expensive, and at least for me, they are so much more affordable when I find them locally than online. So funny, I mean, most things these days, especially with everything going on, I find online, but flower frogs are one of those few exceptions. And then I have, so this was a little dahlia. I believe this is rock run Ashley. And then I have some of these little Oklahoma ivory zinnias, which have done really well for me. All the zinnias did really well for me this year. And also something that has done really well for me this year is the phlox, the annual phlox. And it was tricky for me last year, but I kind of, on a whim, planted a bunch of my starts that I started from seed in my blueberry raised bed in the vegetable garden, in the kitchen garden. And so blueberries need more acidic soil. And I had added soil acidifier into that bed, and it turns out that the phlox performed the best in that bed than anywhere else in my garden, and phlox do like the more acidic conditions. So I will repeat that next year and know that about them, is that I want to get the best performance from them, that I'm going to want them again in my blueberry bed or acidic soil that's been amended. So this is Fata Morgana pincushion flower, or scabiosa. And Fata Morgana is such a creamy color, like the Oklahoma ivory zinnias. And it just, late in the season, started pushing out these blooms that had pink tips in them. And I just discovered them this morning, and they don't look like the other ones. And I just was like, I've got to have these, they're so beautiful. These are the little flower girl zinnias from Floret, and they are doing really well for me this year, as well as this is one of the, this is either one of the Dawn Creek, or there's some that look like this from the Golden Hour mix of seed from Floret as well. Here is one of my precious Dawn Creek fluffy, ruffly zinnias. And I want her, like, there we go. Pride of the place. Oh, and this blue that I'm adding in here is the Chinese forget-me-nots that I started from seed last year, and the ones that are in my garden this year are all self-sown. So I did not grow them again. They came back on their own, as well as all the cosmos in my garden. Look at this little pretty one. This one, I believe, this was Cosmos Purity, which is a really classic white variety. And let me see. How we're doing on the height. There's more. So in my flower bed with the Creme Brulee Phlox, I have the Sahara rudbeckia, which last year I started from seed, planted out in a bed further away from the house that wasn't protected, and the deer never let it bloom for me. And then I only planted it this year in the protected fenced-in kitchen garden. And I'm finally getting to see the blooms, and the combination in the garden with the Creme Brulee Phlox, just like clouds around the rudbeckia, that's just such a pleasing combination to me. Sure. And it's one I definitely want to repeat next year. Okay, so I'm gonna start adding in down below here to fill up this space in the lower part of the arrangement. tend to really like my arrangements to look very airy and just loose and natural. And I definitely love these soft, muted colors. Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with these scabious. Let's try to sneak in here. So this cosmos is one that just self-sowed, and it's not one that I would have picked to have planted. I think it's a sport from, so I have rubenza, which I started from seed last year, or I direct sowed it last year, which is more of this mauve-y, that dusty, muted version. This is a little bit more brash. And I tend to really prefer these tones, but I love cosmos of all shades and shapes, so I'm happy to have all of them in the garden. Okay, that's her done. It took a little bit of wrestling to get all of these beauties in here. That was one of the first times I've played with a glass flower frog, and especially in a shallow vessel like this. So it was a little wobbly, and it was a little tricky, and it's still fragile, but this is for like a mantle situation where it's front facing, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and it inspires you to go pick some beautiful things in your garden today and try something new. We'll see you next time.